Right, and we're live. Welcome everyone to my workshop series, I should say. This is session 2. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Jo McCatty. I am the founder of 𝗲𝘃𝗿𝗆𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀, which is a startup business. Now, last week, it was the first time that I was sharing slides, so I'm going to get stuck into it straight away. Hopefully you can see me, you can hear me. And now that I've done the presentation, I realize you can actually see me in video on the screen. So hello to everyone on LinkedIn. Hello to everyone on Facebook. Hello to everyone on YouTube, wherever you're watching this, whether you're watching this live or whether you're watching it on the replay. These sessions are all about helping you to create that career roadmap. So at the end of the 7 weeks, if you like, you should be able to create your very own career roadmap. So let me go ahead and start sharing, and then let's get cracking. Right, so once again, I am going to be sharing the presentation. I can't see myself, so hopefully you'll be able to see the slides and it's all good to go. Now, 𝗲𝘃𝗿𝗆𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀, it's all about helping people get to the next stage of their career, irrespective of sector or hierarchy. You know, having worked in the TA space myself, you can also take stock of some of this for you too. You know, the focus for me has really been in STEM and life sciences, but as I mentioned, this is a reflection for anyone in any sector, irrespective of hierarchy and role. I also love to support businesses to recruit and retain talent effectively. Now, as I mentioned, this is a series. We did session 1 last week. Hopefully you've watched the live or you've watched the replay and you've done the activity from that. If you haven't, be mindful not to go on to doing the activity from session 2 before you've done the activity from session 1. And after having done that, it's all about understanding how to evaluate your options, you know, when it comes to the roles and opportunities that you can go for next. That's what you're going to get out of today's session. Just to recap, the visual of the career roadmap that we're going through last week, it was all about self-evaluation. I haven't mentioned the professional story bit because when we get to week 3, the branding portfolio, the personal branding, etc., you'll start to articulate a professional story. Also in week 5, in session 5, you'll be able to go through that in terms of finding your voice, but we'll get to that stage. So this is a career roadmap from 1 to 7. Each of these is session 1, session 2, and so on. And we're going through this week by week. And at the end of it, once again, all about having a plan, a roadmap for your career, so then you can take ownership of it, and that's the outcome. So evaluating your options, knowing what your options are, having gone through the exercise of last week where you've kind of started to frame, you know, what are the things that I consider to be my key achievements? What are the defining moments? What are the big decisions that have led to where I am today? And knowing your worth, aligned to the options that you have, that's what I want you to get out of today's session, and just to have it within yourself, irrespective of whether you're actively looking or not. Once again, the recap. You've written down your achievements. I told you to choose 3. It could be professional standpoint or from a personal situation. Defining moments, they were the moments that you've chosen where you were really challenged and you had to dig deep and you had to overcome something, some adversity of some kind. It's like, who did you show up as through those challenges? That gives insight into what are your personality traits and what are the kind of key skills that you keep going back to get through these things. And big decisions that you've made, you know, recapping on the top 3 that you've made perhaps over the last year or beyond. And why is this important? Well, it actually helps you to evaluate what your options are, because if you're not sitting there and making that self-evaluation on yourself, you don't really know what you're capable of doing. Therefore, you don't really know what kind of role options you want to go for, and you don't want to be left in the dark. So let's go through how you figure out knowing what you want, knowing your options, which is the second step to creating your career roadmap. So evaluating options, as I mentioned, make sure you've done that activity from session 1. You know, coming up with these things that will give rise to What are the key skills that you want to use more of? Because they are connected to what makes you happy. They are connected to, what's given you those great achievements and happy moments, those career moments, if you like. And personal moments that kind of, interlink with what happens with your career is how you show up in your personal life and vice versa. So once you've done that, move on to this next thing. Go out and have a look, and I'm sure you've come across things before, specific role descriptions that you've come across where you're like, yeah, I really like that role. Start collecting some of these. I'd say about 3 or 4. You might have some from the past. You might have some within your business right now. There may be advertising roles within your organization. You might have seen something advertised on Seek or LinkedIn. Start to create a little folder of role descriptions that seem to resonate with you, that you like. And you don't need to go into the specifics. It's just, it might be the title or the remit or the sector, but start to collate that information. It's really important. Then what you're going to do is you're going to sort of figure out, all right, out of the role options that I have looked into, who are some of the people that I know that might be working in those kind of roles already within my business, or perhaps, in my LinkedIn network. Start to check out some LinkedIn contacts that you have for people working in the roles that you're inspired by. Now, what that gives rise to is, what the stretch is, what's the gap between you and that next role destination. What's also important is the next stage, confirming the sectors that are of interest to you. Now, what we tend to do when we get to a stage of, all right, I want to embark on a new role, we go and have a look on Seek and LinkedIn for those of us in Australia, and we have a look to see what's out there. And we don't necessarily look at, oh, that's a pharmaceutical company, I really want to work in the healthcare sector. We don't really do that consciously. So what I'm asking you to do here is confirm the sectors that are truly of interest to you. One of the coaches that I've been supporting recently realized that they were in a consulting gig, but in fact, what they wanted to do was join an organization where the products and services were aligned to sustainability and helping the environment. And that's the impact that they wanted to make in the next role that they embarked on. So confirming the sectors of interest, it gives rise to, all right, so these are the places that I would like to work and they're aligned to my values. After all, you don't want to be working in a role where the products and services don't really resonate with you from a values perspective, because at some stage you're going to wake up and say to yourself, do you know what? This sucks, I'm not happy, and I need to make a change. And that's what I want to avoid for you by really taking ownership. Let's move on to the next stage. What are your must-have activities in a role? So let's go back to 1. You've listed your skills and traits, then you figured out some role descriptions aligned to those skills. You've checked some LinkedIn contacts with people working in those specific roles to get some inspiration. You're kind of figuring out what sectors you're, aligned to in terms of values. And then it's, okay, let me sit down and figure out what are the must-haves. A recent coachee, important to be in a leadership role. They were in a leadership role now, but they wanted to make more impact. You're bridging the gap between that and the next role. Leading a team was quite important to them. Innovating, coming up with a strategy, but not only working on strategy, they also wanted the operational element. So it's like, what are your must-haves in the role that you want to pursue next? And one of the key factors that I'll explore is on the next point 6. And I'm going to show you an example of what to do here. And I'm warning you, it's very detailed. So thank God this is a recording, so you can start. And you can also reach out to me if you wanted more clarity. But listing out role options, if you like, in an Excel, it gives you a visual. And what you're going to do is you're going to kind of articulate what's your current role and what's the remit and what are the must-haves in that remit. And you're going to do something similar for roles that you're aspiring to do next. And mind you, the roles that you're aspiring to do next, they could change in respect of the research that you carry out. You might look at the salary and think, no, that's not for me. It's a bit too low, or, oh gosh, it's a bit of a steep learning curve there. I might need to go and do some more education and do another course to bridge the gap. So listing out all your role options, comparing it to what you're doing now, it gives rise to what's the remit that actually leads to the things that I want to do more of, aligned to my skills, that makes me happy. And therefore, the next career destination that I have is going to be a good one. Now, moving on to the point 7, once you've populated the table that I'll share with you, it's really important for you to research the salaries. Now, I mentioned know your options and knowing your worth. Knowing your worth aligned to your career is really from a financial standpoint, what do I actually require to do that very role versus what's the market offering? It's important for you to start establishing that. You might look at a role in a specific sector and know that they pay very low, and then you have to decide, is this something that I can pursue? Is it going to impact me from a personal perspective, my loved ones and, my circumstances personally? So this is how you go through starting to evaluate what your role options actually are. Now, let me show you the example so you know what I'm talking about. I know it's very little writing and it's very busy, but as I mentioned, I just wanted to give an example of create an Excel and start to populate, what's your current role? So for this particular coachee, head of operations is their current role. I started to list out what are some of the things that they execute in their role that are must-haves. And then we were exploring, okay, what options are there that you really enjoyed or you think you're going to enjoy? And that's the role descriptions that you've gone and done the research on, and start to take out what are the key skills, what's the key remit from these roles that are a must-have for your next career destination. And once you've got this in front of you in a visual, you start to figure out, okay, there's a bit of a theme here, managing leaders across several departments, managing stakeholders. Yeah, that's come up quite often. Innovation, operational standpoint, strategy, etc. So this is going to give rise to, right, these are the key skills that I'm going to want to look for next in role opportunities out there. This is something that I think you probably need support with creating. And once again, I'm happy to support you with this. Hopefully you're finding this useful so far. So once again, this gives rise to what has your experience been? What are the key skills that give rise to happy moments? And therefore the next career destination is going to be a happy one too. Now, once you've gone through all of that, as I mentioned, the salary piece is quite important. And let's face it, salary negotiation can be quite tricky, and it usually happens towards the end of a hiring process. Now, what if I told you that you could take ownership of figuring out what you should be paid? And how can you go about doing so? Well, go ahead and do your research. Are you being paid well enough for the skills that you bring to light? I mean, for me, having worked as a scientist and then embarked in the sector of recruitment, I had no idea what the salaries were. And so as I went through my career journey, when it got to the stage of joining an internal organization, what I should have really done is done my research, because when I joined that business, I was underpaid, probably 15K out from the males in the business, which is a bit sad if you think about it. So going out and doing the research, evaluating what is the market suggesting versus what am I earning now? Why is this important? It's important because you're evaluating the role options, you're comparing it to, what's going on in the marketplace in terms of the salaries, and then you have to compare it to your own financial commitments and lifestyle. And sometimes we have changed circumstances, whether it's in a relationship or you've now got kids that are onto high school and you want to pay for private education. There are things that really do alter the amount of money that you actually want to pitch for. So you've got to start to think about that and be clear on the figure that you require, because often what happens is you have a conversation and it's usually with a recruiter, sometimes a hiring manager, when it gets to that stage, and it's like, okay, so who tells who first? You tell me what you're offering, or I'll tell you what salary I'm looking for. And it's always quite awkward. And you want to give the best to your candidates, but at the same time, the candidates wanting, more money that they're earning now. And there's always this awkwardness that occurs. Well, what if you, as a candidate, as a potential candidate in the future, when you're embarking on your next career move, what if you took accountability and you figured out what's important to you in terms of the salary piece? And then you had that conversation to say, hey, this is what I'm earning. I'm happy to share it. These are the reasons why. These are the key skills. This is what I'm looking for. How cool is that? So you being in control of your career, this is what it's all about. And now, being a recruiter, I wanted to tell you something. I wanted to tell you what I think. Please, 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 if you're going to take anything out of today's session, don't wait until you're going through a hiring process to actually do the salary piece, the salary evaluation for yourself. Please, please, please. So that's it for today. How did we do? 15 minutes, micro learning, promise delivered. Hopefully you got what you needed out of today's session. Once again, thank you for listening or watching, whether you are doing this live or on the replay. Please join my Slack community. I have 2 people who've joined. Yay, superstars, high five to you. Come along there because I am going to be dropping more insights. I'll provide the Excel for you in there. I'll help with the framework of how to articulate your achievements, defining moments, etc. So please go ahead and join the Slack community if you found this useful. And that's it for today. So I will see you next week, same time, 12:30. Until then, stay safe and take care. See ya.